Hello? Am I audible? Is the music too loud? I think the music's too loud. Okay, so I want to read spooky stories. Cozy, I will fight you. And I will win. But there is a creepy story that I listened to Meat Canyon read, actually, and I was like, damn, I wanna show this to everybody at the milk farm, but I want you to just not watch a video with me. I wanted to like read it to you guys. And I figured like my roommates are asleep already. Everybody went to bed early because of important things going on tomorrow. So I was like, why not? Why not do a fun little like ASMR reading night, you know? Bedtime stories. Spooky, creepy bedtime stories. Okay. I think I'm ready to be perceived. I think we got everything going. Everything's working. Nothing is broken. I'm ready. I'm ready to read for you guys. Please understand, I have dyslexia, and I will fuck it up. I will fuck it up quite a bit. Quite a bit. I'm gonna misread things. I am not the best at reading. Like, I can read in my head just fine, but having to read out loud, I don't know what happens. Who is dyslexia? A whore, and I hate her, and if I could, I would hunt her down and murder her. I'm not the Hulk! I'm supposed to be a goblin, I'm not the Hulk. I'm a ghoul. A goblin. Goblin. I'm a goblin. Can't you human contact? Was that what that was? Why did I freeze? I thought a head pat was coming. I froze for so long. But does the Hulk have this? I'm not Shrek. Does the Hulk have a tongue? I'm not the Hulk. I'm a goblin. You come in here. I spend like literally an hour getting all spooky, all goblin-fied, and all you can say to me is Hulk, Shrek. I wanted to be a goblin. I just wanted to be a goblin. I didn't even finish. I didn't want to take forever. I was gonna like change the color on my eyelashes and my hair and stuff too. But the most I got was body. I have fangs. See? I've had fangs this entire time. And I got goblin blush. Am I not spooky enough? But anyways, I want to do a little reading. A little spooky reading. So we need to find something like for the background. This doesn't really fit the story that I'm gonna be reading. And it's a two-part story. So there's two sides to the story that we're gonna read tonight. There's the wife's side and the husband's side. Okay? So let's see. Creepy, ambience, royalty, free. Let's see. Dark ambience, horror background music, 10 hours. This could work. This is nice. Is this good for your ear holes? Do you like it? Oh, I burped. I'm sorry. Ah, thank you for timestamping those. I really appreciate that. It's something you don't have to do, but you do it, and it helps a lot because it means that people can find songs that they enjoy. And heck, maybe somebody will like clip songs that they like, and then I can post those things onto like Twitter and stuff and be like, look guys, here's proof that I can do sing-song. Look at this. Wow, prospective companies. Look at what I can do. Aw, thank you. But it's still helpful to people who would also like to hear more. Okay, we got our music playing. Let me close Twitter because it's unimportant and we don't care about Twitter. Okay. And we'll get a topic up so that people that come in know that we're doing like read time, story time. It's still goblin mood. I'll put topic down here. Topic info. Scary story ASMR. And then... There we go. You were doing your part. Get in the right spot. Get in the right fucking... Get in the spot. I hate this. I hate when it does that. Bitch, you are gonna be somewhat even, I swear to God. Okay. Tell us a horror story. Talk about one of your traumas. Hooray! As a little treat, one time, way back in the day, my mom thought it was a great idea to make me ride on the trunk of her car from what was our dumpsters at the very end of our trailer park road all the way back to our house. And this was like maybe a 2-minute drive. It was a good distance. And I don't know what made her do this. I feel like maybe she was trying to murder me at this point. But she sped over a speed bump. And I flew off the back of the trunk of her, like, little neon, whatever make and model. And I flew off on the trunk. She was making me, like, ride sitting on the back of the trunk of her car. No way to, like, hold on to this thing, really. There was a pickup truck, like, directly behind us. I wanted to sit inside of the car. She just, like, demanded that I sit on the trunk. Well, she sped over a speed bump, and I went flying off, and I slammed, like, straight the back of my head onto the asphalt on the road. Blacked out. The car, or the pickup truck behind us, almost hits me. It takes her a minute to even notice that I fell off of the back of the car, I think. I don't really know. I don't really remember. I was passed the fuck out. But I wake up, like, in the car, dazed and confused. And then we get home, and I'm definitely concussed. Like, I think I actually got brain damage that day. That's one of the times that I think I've gotten brain damage. I never got to go to the hospital. For obvious reasons. How is she supposed to explain that? How are you supposed to explain that at the hospital? Like, oh yeah, my kid has, like, a skull fracture and brain damage from me making them ride on the trunk of my car and them almost getting hit by a truck. So that is the time that I probably should have seen a doctor. And there you go. If I'm taking a bath and I try and rest my head on, like, the back of the tub or the wall of the tub and I'm trying to soak, it gives me an immense pain. It feels like a shit ton of pressure on my... It feels like it's my brain is being, like, pushed down by the back of my skull if I lay down. And it's not the first time I've hit the back of my skull either. I've had many head injuries in my life, and my mom never took me to the hospital for any of them, because 90% of them are from her trying to get me to do something stupid and then me doing it so she'll leave me alone and then injuring myself. It's not John, it's not a goblin! Anyways, so there you go. That's a spooky trauma story. I got drain damage. Anyways, tonight's story is titled, My Husband Has Taken Our Role-Playing Too Far. I'm gonna see if there's any fun little voice mods. Maybe they'll have the telephone one back. Hi, Nero! We're doing spooky stories tonight. And I'm gonna see if we have any, like, fun voice mods to use. Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Because I wanted, like, I'm trying to do ASMR. Like, not at this moment. No! Not the Hulk, I am a goblin. Cheap mic, what does that sound like? Hold on. What is... Oh. Oh, it's really... Maybe if we make it less distortion? Yeah. 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 How would this sound, do you think, for like a scary story reading? It kind of sounds like I'm supposed to be reading SCP files right now. Can get the mic. Nope. I don't know. I don't know if I like this. Narpy. I had a feeling people would call me the Hulk too, like last minute, and I still stuck with it. I know I'm trying to be a goblin. You know I'm trying to be a goblin. I will cave, and I will draw myself in a really quick shitty doodle tonight as the Hulk, just for you. Okay. Is this creepy enough? Sounding microphone? Let's start the story, and if you guys don't like how this sounds, we will turn it off. But I'm trying to give like a little ear experience tonight, and as long as it doesn't sound bad. Maybe if I turn off my fucking mic. Is that better? Does it sound okay? My husband has taken our role-playing too far. Ah. When he told me he wanted to play pretend, I thought it was something to do with sex. And the funny thing is, if he'd whipped out a Wonder Woman costume, I would have gone along with it. Things had been cold between us for years. One-word replies and tense conversations had become the norm. I was prepared to do what was necessary to try and patch things up. When he clarified he wanted to pretend to be young, I felt a lot more hesitation. If this was a sex thing, I thought, it could get pretty weird. Even as he explained it all, I just kept waiting for it to turn into a sex thing. Does it sound okay? Also, this doesn't get pedophile-y. I just need y'all to know that. It doesn't, that's not what's scary about this story, okay? It's not. I've already heard this story before. So, we're good. I've checked it, we're fine. Alien, no. Goblin. I'm just all kinds of things. I'm just gonna say yes to everything you guys say that I am. Anyways. Yeah. When he clarified he wanted to pretend to be young, I felt a lot more hesitation. If this was a sex thing, I thought it could get pretty weird. Even as he explained it all, I just kept waiting for the turn and direction. I figured that's what it had to be, right? But he says it wasn't like that at all. He just... I am Neo. God, I'm having trouble reading this. I want to zoom in. I'm blind. I'm old. Imagine me, like, leaning in with my glasses on. Okay. I'm not made for this. I don't think I like this voice filter either. Bah. I thought it might, like, add to the spook factor, but I think it just was crunching my ears. So if it's crunching my ears, it's crunching your ears. He just wanted some time, now and again, when he could behave like a child. Nothing too weird, just sort of therapeutic roleplay. I'll admit, it wasn't what I thought. He wanted me to pack his lunches and kiss his cheek before going to work. He said he wanted me to give him the kind of things you'd give a kid. So I packed him a yogurt, a ham sandwich, and an apple. There was also a small carton of juice, all tucked neatly into a brown paper bag. His whole face lit up with joy when he saw it. I came up with the brown bag myself, and he told me it was a nice touch. I remember thinking it was the first sincere compliment he'd paid me in years. I felt a rare pang of pride at that. After that, I got the gist pretty quickly. He wanted me to run him baths and sit there beside him while he played with toys. He wanted to ask me for permission before going out to play in the yard. He wanted spaghetti and hot dog for dinner and jelly and ice cream for dessert. I did it all with a smile. He never really looked at me all that much as a wife, but as a caregiver, it was like every little gesture was the greatest thing to him. I thought it was messed up, sure, but I don't know. Those first few weeks were actually quite nice. One day he came home, and I had the telly set to old cartoons from his childhood, and he just burst into tears. I bought the DVDs as a little surprise, but didn't expect that kind of reaction. I ran over and held him, and we stayed like that, huddled on the sofa for hours. I'd never felt that kind of closeness or vulnerability from him, or, well, anyone else I'd met. It was confusing, but I liked it. We'd always been each other's closest friends, and now he was spending more time with me than ever before. And he cared about what I had to say and genuinely paid attention to me. I once baked him a cake, and he sat on the counter, kicking his legs, asking me questions the whole time. I told him about the recipe, about how it had been passed down for generations. And I could see that he wasn't play acting, he was blown away by the whole story. But the requests just kept coming, as did the amount of time he spent role-playing. It started out as something before and after work, but he soon quit his job, and without notice, it became an all-day activity. Like I said, it was part of the fun, and I didn't put any limits on it. He did what I imagine most kids do all day. He watched TV, played with toys and video games, ran around making silly noises. He also wanted the less fun stuff, too. So I had to set him chores, bathe him, brush and cut his hair, make him eat vegetables. He even asked me to start organizing him homework, so I bought some old exercise books for low-level math and English. He was never a naughty, but he did like to make a fuss when I told him to do these things. But sometimes I'd catch a sly smile or a twinkle in his eye, and I knew he really liked it. There was something inherently bizarre and actually kind of funny about watching an accountant sit there and struggle to carry the one. Still, it was a far cry from the very guarded and deeply arrogant man that I'd married. I guess I'm just trying to put it all in order for you, but I'm not sure I can. There were times it felt wrong, I suppose. All my attraction to him went right out the window, but I didn't care because we didn't have sex that much as husband and wife, and even when we did, it wasn't very good. Maybe if you understood that I'm not a social person, you could see why I let this all happen. I don't have friends, never have. Not even when I was in university. His company, his placid, warm, and adoring company, it worked a kind of magic on me. I think also that I actually quite liked looking after someone. In hindsight, I probably should have just got a cat. At the time, I just liked the change of pace, and I always suspected there was something dark lurking beneath him. My mother had warned me about this with men, and I was just glad he didn't like killing hookers. This seemed safe. I lost my spot. No! This seemed safe. Harmless, at least, at first. As we settled further into a routine, I started to feel lonely again. Only it was different. This wasn't the bored listlessness of a day spent at home trying to look busy. It was more like standing over an ocean and looking down. I think it was the way he started to change physically. I thought they were all deliberate changes, things he did to look less like an adult. Sometimes he looked at me and I didn't like it. It was a hungry look. I met a boy once when I was younger, and he looked at me like that, and I liked it. But coming from my husband in blue pajamas with a pacifier in his mouth and a rattle in one hand, thought I could have been sick. And come nighttime, the house started to feel different. Larger and colder than usual. I started drinking for some reason. For some reason! I wonder why! I think partly just to unwind. When things broke, it was up to me to fix. Or to answer the phone, or to deal with bills. We had plenty saved up, so don't get me wrong. It wasn't like we were in dire circumstances, but there was no one else to share the endless responsibilities with. I felt like a weight on my shoulders. One morning I'd have to go through the motions with a pounding headache and found that the days started to blur. Months passed, maybe even a whole year. It's hard for me to remember any of these events in a straight line, and that's not all my fault. I remember thinking that he was a growing boy, but that wasn't true at all. We ordered new shoes for him online, and they were a different size to the usual. Smaller. He said it was because he wanted the light-up ones. But he's been a size 11 as an adult, and the ones we bought were for a young boy. I don't know how, but he wore those new shoes just fine. I pinched the toe and told him he'd grow into them. I had vivid memories of watching him struggle to put a stuffed toy on the top shelf, but he'd always towered over me at 6'3". Even now, I'm putting it all back together in my head and finding little surprises. There was always the sense that if I stopped too long to think, then everything would rush past me and I'd miss it. Even trying my best to just go with it, I found myself feeling like a stranger in my own house. Things moved, rooms were rearranged, and new toys just appeared, all without me knowing how. A whole swing set was installed in the garden without me remembering, but when I checked, my signature was on the invoice. At one point, he began wearing diapers and I didn't even notice until days passed. It just kind of made sense somehow. In the moment it had felt so natural, and looking back I seemed to remember my husband as a child, not a fully grown man. I'd been feeding a toddler, hugging a toddler, watching a toddler play games, but at the same time, it wasn't any of that. It was my husband sitting there with his long legs crossed and crumbs in his beard. One morning I woke up to a dog, and the next day it was gone. I searched the house for hours, feeling like I was going insane, but sure enough, there was a bowl.
My milk is delicious.
And dog food right by the kitchen door. So it wasn't like I'd imagined it. Thank you for the follow, hi. There was no dog in the house though, nor in the garden. Exhausted and beaten, I went into my husband's room for a final check when, at the sight of him, this strange apprehension came over me. I couldn't get the thought out of my head that he'd done something. After all, if he was a child, he was a bit odd, wasn't he? He didn't play with other children, he didn't misbehave, he barely spoke. He was a good little boy, sure, but not necessarily all that normal.
I am the
And
milkman. My milk is delicious.
of course, he wasn't a child. He was something else. Standing there, I appreciated just how odd he had started to look. His hair was thinning, not just falling out, mind you. It felt downy to the touch, soft like a newborn's peachy fuzz. And good God, the smell. It was like a baby smell, but foul like sour milk. And it clung to him no matter how much I bathed him and washed his clothes. There were days when it felt like I could choke to death on it. And I learned to breathe carefully through my nose whenever we were together. Also, thank you for the follow. Hi. His pupils were huge. Too large for those small sockets. His eyes had always been spaced far apart, but placed on a child-shaped head, he looked like he was wearing a bad Halloween mask with doll eyes instead of his own. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at me from around a corner or at the bottom of a long corridor. Sometimes that meant him standing there in the dark, audibly breathing as his shoulders rose and fell. Some unseen thought excited him. Other times it meant glimpsing his gray head disappearing behind a wall or door the second I turned. He drooled almost constantly and wiped the excess on his sleeve, but a lot of it landed on the floor anyways. There were times I'd find small puddles of spit in locked rooms, often just behind where I'd been standing. Other times I could hear his difficult breathing inches from my back, but he was never actually there when I turned around. His pupils were huge. Wait, no, I already read that part. Sorry. I was afraid of him, I realized. And I nearly cried out when standing in the dark, quiet room. He rolled onto his back as he slept in the crib. He opened a gummy smile and I saw that all his teeth had fallen out, barring just a few. And the closer I looked, the more I am certain I became that even though those were not his original ones, they were too white, too small, too peg-like to be an adult's incisors. I secretly hoped I was going insane. The alternative was somehow even worse. I was on the toilet when the doorbell rang. It was a shrill screech that grated, and I jumped so badly I dropped my phone. I quickly finished up and waddled over to the window with my pants still down. There was a van just outside the front gates, which were open. But there was no sign of anyone walking around down there. Normally, this kind of problem would just go away and then they'd leave the package on the doorstep, but something felt wrong. I couldn't hear my husband anywhere in the house. No footsteps, no babbling, no clacking toys or rolling wheels. That van looked strange. The driver's side door was still open, the engine was still running. I tried to digest what all it meant while running downstairs, stopping only when I saw the front door open. A gust of wind blew through the main house, drawing out all the homely warmth. I had images of our roleplay being found out, and fears of humiliation and embarrassment filled my head. There was something else muddled in with that, all the thoughts as well. We'd spent so long locked up together, my husband and I, safe and far away from the rest of the world. How would he react to this intrusion? As if an answer, someone cried out from the living room. I ran down the last few stairs and pushed open the door to find a small man shaking where he stood. A brown cardboard box clutched in his chest for protection. What? He stuttered. I put my arm around his shoulder and started to move him towards the door. I couldn't see my husband, but he was never too far away from me, and I couldn't help but notice one of his favorite toys lying on the floor. "He let me in," the man continued. Look just like a... Suddenly, he turned to me and gripped both my arms. "What's wrong with him?" he asked. I've never seen anything like that before. I don't remember what I said, but I kept pushing him towards the front door, out of the living room into the kitchen. A quick turn of my head and I saw my husband ducking back down beneath the sofa. He was the wrong size to be so quick and sneaky, but he had a way of hiding and moving around the house so that you almost never saw him unless you wanted to. Come on, I muttered, but the delivery man's feet were slow, cumbersome. It was like his head was all muddled up. It was just a child, he cried. He cried like it just dawned on him. Oh no, I frightened him, didn't I? He tried turning back, but I stopped him. No, I didn't mean to scare him, his face! He stopped resisting and his shoulders slumped back down. What's wrong with him? He asked. Why do my eyes hurt? He's sick, I answered, finally pulling him the last few feet to the door. I shoved him back past the threshold and stood panting to catch my breath. He's just very unwell, I said, stifling a sob. Part lie, part truth. It's a condition. The delivery man looked as if he was still trying to sort his own head out, but it seemed like he bought it. He went to leave, putting one foot down on the porch steps before suddenly deciding that he needed to make amends. Please don't report me, he cried, and I jumped a little. I didn't mean to come off as rude. My heart started racing. I could smell my husband, the stench nearly overpowering. He was so close I could practically feel him. But where he was, I couldn't say. I needed to get this man away before something terrible happened. He was babbling endlessly about offending me. Please, I said on the verge of tears, please leave. Did he understand? I wonder. Sometimes when I think back, I see a flickering of understanding in his eyes. It looked like empathy. I can't be sure because it all kind of just blurs together. The shock in his eyes as my husband's arm grabbed his ankle cannot be understated. Neither of us expected him to be down there. I still don't know how he did it, but he was down there, giggling in an unhealthy falsetto rasp. Before anyone could speak, he yanked so hard the delivery man fell backwards and his leg disappeared into shadow. With one hand, the crying man clamped down on his thigh as if to soothe some unseen pain, and with the other he tried to push himself back from between those wooden slats. But my husband was always a big man, and now he had a strange sort of air about him, a quiet, crackling power that followed him from room to room. The struggle was one-sided, and the delivery man screamed and howled. He gave up holding the one leg and tried using both hands to pull or push or drag himself away. I didn't know what was happening out of sight, but his face drained of blood and his screams just kept getting worse. I've never heard a man make a sound like that before. Not an adult man. It was scary in a way I wasn't prepared for. I think he asked me to help at one point. I contemplated calling the police, but never did. I was so terrified I couldn't even bring myself to move. Occasionally, one of my husband's thick, knuckled hands could be glimpsed as he pulled more of the man inside. Those hands looked so large, so pale, so deeply unhealthy. I could hear what he was doing, but that didn't really come to my attention until I unpacked it all mentally long after it was over. But yes, I could hear bone crack and something like paper being torn. Was it an hour or just a few minutes? I don't know. The man just kept crying and pleading, and my husband just kept pulling and pulling and pulling. The stairs started to buckle, but the wood was thick and strong. The final question came down to what would break first, a pelvis or a post. The delivery man's cries told me that he thought would happen. He was right. With a tremendous yell of joy, just like a child on their birthday, my husband latched another fist around the man's other leg and pulled so hard there was a sudden crack. And his victim fell limp, like a toy losing power. What followed was a silence so heavy it hurt my ears, broken only by the faint, wet sound of my husband dragging the rest of the man into the dark. The space between each step couldn't have been more than 6 inches, but brute force won that out. The last I remember of the man's face was a pale, bulging eyes. The arrangement of his arms and legs didn't even make sense anymore. He looked like a spider after you stepped on it. I stayed there for a while, hoping to hell and back that I'd hear an ambulance or police siren, but like I said, we lived far out of town. By the time it occurred to me that no one would rescue the man or me, the blood on the steps was congealing. My husband was still just out of sight, giggling and clapping like a kid making mud pies. "Come on," I finally managed to say, speaking like the doting mother I was. "Put your new toy away. I'll make you some lunch." I was washing dishes and staring into the yard. I remember it resembled somewhere I'd seen before, but I couldn't remember where or why. My husband was somewhere upstairs and I was alone. I'd often hear him thunder around up there doing God knows what, his bare feet slapping on hardwood floors he'd once picked out in a turtleneck and chinos. That seemed like a different person's life now. Hard to believe it was the same man who brought me something just days before that made me sick. He'd made it himself, and it had hung on the fridge for a whole afternoon, like just another piece of macaroni in art. Was that thing where the dog ended up? I wondered. Running a dishcloth over the same plate for the second hour in a row. Movement caught my eye out in the garden. Something floated down past the tall hedges that walled in our yard and landed plainly over the overgrown grass. It was a bright, luminous yellow that glowed like a safety vest. For some reason, I held up the plate in my hand, looked between the two. God, I was so out of it. It was like a worm in my head. I could feel it. Maybe even reach out and grab it if I could just focus on it for long enough, but each time I closed my mind around it, each time I started to feel out the shape of this intrusion, this rewriting of my own brain, it slithered away. "Frisbee," I muttered. And then, just like that, she was there. She was maybe 9 or 10. How had she wound up here, I wondered. Maybe she was lost? She was looking around like she didn't know where she was. I could see she was scared, and my heart sank as I realized how awful our home must have looked to her. There was a time I was proud, but now we lived in decrepit filth. Of course, the little girl looked scared, I thought. This was the scary house every child feared, with broken windows and overgrown bushes that choked a yard filled with rusted swings and abandoned toys. And this poor girl had lost her frisbee, and... "No," I said to myself, and then once again into the room. "No!" But it was too late. I could hear him scuttle around before the house fell into quiet. From outside, the girl started to say something. A greeting, perhaps? There was a knife in my hand that I didn't remember taking, and I was outside before I had time to even think. The little girl looked to me and instantly burst into tears. I was sprinting towards her with the knife in one hand and a murderous look straight out of a horror film. But before that, before she'd even seen me, she'd been looking towards a thicket of grass with disgust on her face. "No!" I screamed. Not at her, but at him. I picked her up in my arms even as she batted me away. I didn't care if this girl thought I was Satan himself. If she ran back home and told her parents about the mean, creepy lady and they called the police and this all ended with me safe and warm behind bars, I didn't care. I clutched my arm around her waist and willed it into a band of steel to keep her safe. She squirmed but could not break free, and I ran towards the gate as fast as I could carry her. "It's okay," I cooed. "He won't get you." I was halfway there when her screaming and wriggling stopped. Her head was over my shoulder, and all of a sudden, she gripped me like I was a life raft. The change was instant, and it made me falter. For a brief moment, I heard his feet pulsing towards me. I turned, brandishing the knife like a torch against the darkness, but nothing was there. The girl started screaming again, the sight of my husband sinking, and she held on to me with dear life. "Not the baby!" she screamed. "No, no, no, not the baby! Not the baby!" I repeated. "I won't let him!" I backed up to the gate carefully and began to wonder what next, when out of nowhere, he leaped into sight and grabbed the girl's hair, yanking her head back while she screamed so hard her face turned beetroot red. He jumped up and down, hollering and crying like a giddy toddler with a Christmas present. His misshapen face was grinning, his gums black and bloody, but his hands threatened to tear the girl's scalp right off. I started to feel nauseous at the sight of him. His size seemed to change with every glance. I couldn't make sense of it, and I felt that worm inside my mind wriggle and dislodge more of my thoughts. Sometimes he was waist high, sometimes a full-grown man, but always those hands were too large for his frame, and the brown flakes of blood still trapped beneath his chipped nails reminded me exactly what he wanted. "No!" I screamed and lashed out with the knife. The motion that came to me in the moment was a downward thrust, and the knife was left embedded into my husband's right shoulder. He let go immediately and started to howl and sob. He seemed to shrink before my very eyes, and I quickly set the girl down and pushed her through the gate. I pulled the bars shut, screamed at her to run, then quickly turned back to my husband, who was sucking his thumb and trying to pull the knife out with his remaining hand. After some awkward fumbling, he grabbed the handle and threw the knife to the ground. It clattered to the floor, blood glistening in the sun. "You're just like her!" he said, his voice breaking and returning to the calm, authoritative man that I'd once known. His beady eyes bored into me, and I could have collapsed under that stare. The change in cadence was as sudden as sheer drop off a cliff. I just wanted what she'd never gave me, but you're all the same! Suddenly, his whole face bunched up into a twisted, infantile smile. He declared with joy and delight, in a voice identical to a child's, "I'm going to crawl inside you." I need to take a little break real quick for some water. It's a creepy story, right? And there is the husband side to this. So what we're listening to right now is the wife's side to this whole story. I liked listening to this. So I'm really happy that I was able to find it so I could read it to you guys too. And I will link you to the Reddit post so that you can share this with people if you want. Give me a second, I'm stretching. Yeah, watch some cartoons after this. Okay. Let us continue. Reading more of, husband. My husband has taken our role-playing too far. Dinner was cold. It was the first meal I'd made him after our little fight. I'd fidgeted over it for hours, filled with doubts and fears, but it all came to naught. He was too smart to fall for that. Whether he'd seen the rat poison or not, he hadn't come for dinner. Now I was left with a problem. I'd stayed fixed to the spot in the kitchen, working away with endless looks over my shoulder, and night had fallen. The only light was in the kitchen, and it was a big house filled with inky black shadows that swallowed entire rooms and corridors. Often, I would glimpse a silver moment, a sliver of movement, like a shark's fin cresting a wave. I might see a blue piece of fabric catch the moonlight before disappearing back into the dark. He was out there. I had a new knife, at least, and something about the adrenaline in my veins helped me think more clearly. When I looked back into my thoughts, I no longer saw a child, but something twisted and deformed. With delusion and malice, a disease had festered not only in our heads, but the space we shared and the world we lived in, spilling out into reality like a migraine aura made real. I didn't know if it was an intruder or just something dark that had spread from within, but it belonged to me one way or another. I couldn't let it live. "Dinner's ready!" I cried. "Come on!" There was a shuffling somewhere out front by the stairs. I don't know why I bothered saying anything. He must have seen me. I cried out again, my voice faltering from fear and exhaustion. I picked the plate up and put it by the threshold of the kitchen. It edges just inches from the darkness. "You must be hungry," I said, doing my best to smile. "Please eat it. For me?" A single chubby finger peeked through the doorway and slid the plate across. It was so loud, and the silence grating across tile. Something felt wrong, but in the moment I just hoped it was the sheer panic trapped deep within my chest. The plate whipped out of the darkness and struck me in the face. My nose cracked and my head snapped backwards before I knew it. I was on the floor, the plate rolling to a noisy stop a few feet away. It was whole, but one edge was coated in blood. I became aware of a coppery taste in my mouth, and I realized it was mine all over that plate. I felt like I was lying there for a good few seconds, agony ringing in my ears while I opened and closed my jaw in disconcerted shock. Slowly, layer by layer, things started to right themselves. There was a sharp pain in the back of my head, and I realized I must have been hit when I fell over. There was a weight on top of me, pressing down, making it hard to breathe. Had I broken a rib? I wondered. But didn't feel much like that. It felt like something was moving around, something sharp and painful. I looked down and saw my husband's cabbage-shaped head bobbing away at my breast. I screamed and pushed him away, but he clamped down hard, those nasty little peg teeth burying themselves into my flesh and refusing to dislodge. I was overcome with disgust and started beating away at him, scratching deep gouges into his scalp and shoulders. Only when I buried a thumb into his nasty little eye did he relent and let go. He sat up, and my thumb slid out of the socket with a pop. And for a moment, he looked overcome with naive sadness. But then hatred watched over his face, and his remaining eye glared at me with murder. He started to choke me. Those terrible fists clamping around my throat like bands of iron. I struggled, lashing my hands out at the floor and furniture, desperate for something, anything that might help. Thankfully, my hands aligned on the knife, and I drove it hard into the soft flesh of his armpit. For a moment, he carried on as normal, but by time I drove the blade between his ribs. Once, then twice. The blood had already drained from his face. It soaked us both, and to my horror, it stank of sour milk and talcum powder. I watched the realization of his wounds dull the fire in his eyes. He stumbled backwards, his face scrunching up as he let out a horrific bawl. Pink foam seeped from his mouth and he gasped and choked. His lungs were filling with blood, and I watched him die slowly before me. By the time it was done, he was a man again. Strangely dressed, emaciated wretch of a man, but nothing more. I touched my throat. It felt sore, and my chest was a ragged mess. "Was it good for you?" I asked, a laugh rising, unbidden from my lips. The sound of my own voice scared me. I sounded deranged, but I couldn't stop laughing at the joke I'd made. And before long, my breath became short, and consciousness slipped away in its entirety. It's been some time. How long, I don't know. And I still wonder whether he was even real. I burned the house down, and I finally got to hear the sounds of sirens coming to take me away. It was a weird problem to explain to the police. They had evidence of a child living in the home, but no body. They thought I'd offed a kid and burned the house down to hide the evidence. Later on, they found one adult body, but it was the delivery man's, not my husband's. And I was arrested just a few short weeks later. Of course, I told them the truth, just barring a few of the weirder details. My husband had gone insane, I said. He snapped, started acting like a child, killed one man, then tried to kill me. Unfortunately, there was no records of my husband, nor our marriage, nor our life together. I lived alone, unemployed because of a wealthy trust fund granted to me by my family. The mortgage was not paid by my husband, but rather the trust. All of this was news to me. He was real. I know that much. I still have the wounds to prove it, and they found that little girl who testified, somewhat in my defense. She really had seen a man dressed as a baby, she said. Although, when asked to give a description of what he looked like, she broke down screaming and had to be sedated. I knew what that felt like. I couldn't tell you my husband's age, his eye color, his birthday, or even his name. It's all worked against me. I think I'm on my second appeal, but my lawyer told me to lower my expectations. No marriage certificate, no wedding invitations, no relationship status on Facebook, no photos, no plane tickets for the honeymoon, no official documentation. Every conceivable trace of this man's life simply doesn't exist. I managed to get a brain scan, and they said my brain should belong to a dementia patient. Except I'm just 36. It's all full of holes, lesions, they call them. There's a good name for that. I said there was a worm, didn't I? It was eating through my head like an apple core. Not a literal worm, of course. Well, I don't know that for sure, but still, I think he did something to my head because even now, just the thought of him can give me a nosebleed. I don't remember much of my life before. He wrote it over like a computer file and deliberately blotted out whatever didn't suit his purpose. I think it was childish of me to ever believe that a few holes in the torso would kill him. It, I should say. After all, playing pretend at being human. He was playing pretend at being human, just as much as he was being a child. And that was... my husband is taking our roleplay too far. But that's just the wife's perspective. Now we need to do the husband's perspective, right? And I feel like she's legitimately insane and like her reality is warping. If she's got like some weird dementia, like, yeah, the husband's real. We're getting his side of it. I don't know. I don't remember the ending for the husband. I didn't finish the ending for the husband. It was like a 3-hour long video. So it's gonna be new for me just as much as it is for you guys. Hi, I'm a goblin. So let's find the husband's version. So this was my husband has taken our role-playing too far. Let's go find part 2, the husband's side. It's on the No Sleep Reddit. No wonder it's so good. Let's see. My wife has taken our roleplay too far. And let's see what the husband has to say. Found it! Hold on, I gotta scan a code. It's R18, which is stupid. I understand this is not something someone should be reading if they're a minor. It's some freaky shit. I feel like you need like a brain that processes information accurately to read this and not have it alter you in some weird fucked up way, you know? God damn it, let me in. You let me read the other one. I don't want to sign up for Reddit. I gotta log into Reddit to read it. It hates me. Let me in. I'm making a Reddit just so I can read this. Okay. My wife has taken our role-playing too far. I would love to. If you guys want to submit like scary short stories, we could make this like a weekly Halloween thing, or like a couple of days of the week, because I want to get better at doing cozy times like this. I want to read stuff to you guys. Okay, let me put this in dark mode. Dear God. Ugh. Where's dark mode? Guys, someone here has to, you know, be a Redditor. How do I make dark mode? Oh, I found it. Never mind. I was zoomed in, so it wasn't dark mode. Teehee. Anyways. Are you guys ready for part 2? My wife has taken our role-playing too far? Here we go! On another adventure! Hooray! Oh, hi, Salbrene. I'm reading scary stories and you're here just in time for the husband's part of the story. I'm going to be linking to both of these scary stories. They are connected. So you get to hear the husband's side. Yay! Or just watch the VOD. Yay! My wife has taken our role-playing too far. And just so you guys know, this isn't a sex thing. It's a creepy story, and there's not weird sex stuff going on in it, okay? It was my wife who suggested roleplay, despite what she may say elsewhere. You'll just have to decide who you think is being honest. When she first suggested acting out roles, I was hoping for pigtails and pleated skirts, but I should have figured it wouldn't be like that. If I'm honest, there isn't much that I wouldn't have agreed to at that point in our relationship. Things weren't bad, but, well, they weren't good either. One morning I woke up to a packed lunch and orange juice on the breakfast table. When I tried to make myself a cup of coffee, she told me that growing boys shouldn't drink things like that. I typically skipped breakfast and headed right out the door each morning, but the way she sat there looking at me made me feel like I was missing something. It took me a minute to realize that this right here was the start of our little pretend play. So I sat down and ate the cereal and drank the juice. The whole scene made me pretty uncomfortable, I guess. I just felt on the spot. It sounds weird, but I've always had a bit of a thing about people cooking for me. My mom died when I was 8, and my dad didn't really pay me much attention. I had to cook and clean.
You a beta cook.
My God. I had to cook and clean, and I ironed my uniform every night before school, and no one ever did my homework with me. Later on, my dad married some poor waitress half his age and treated her like a servant, and I realized that must have been exactly how he had treated my mother. I'm not saying that this taught me to be the perfect man or anything, far from it. His dad was babied. His dad was babied. Like, straight up, she did everything for him. He was a man baby. She cooked and cleaned and everything. Oh, you heard the husband first? Ooh, okay. Hold on, I'm gonna turn off some of our redeems for tonight, because I feel like a spooky story will be better if you guys can't do things. We're taking it away from you. Boop.
A fantastic day for capitalism.
I'm taking away your rights. Say goodbye, goodbye, rights. Goodbye, thank you, Paul. Goodbye. Where's the cook chair? There it is. Goodbye, the chair. Ah, that one's not loud. No Chatpo. Boobles is dead tonight. No more sheesh. No more scanner. Okay, there we go. All better. Continuing on. I'm not saying that this taught me to be the perfect man or anything. Far from it. I just didn't like things that made me feel like I was becoming my dad. But there was my wife, making me cereal for breakfast and then handing me a neat little lunchbox with cartoons on it that I'd watched as a kid. Goku, that was a throwback. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't like some part of it. Driving to work that day, I decided this whole roleplay was probably just some kind of therapy and that this was my best go-to all along. Even after I got home that night to find that she'd run me a bath. Not only did she want me to be a clean little boy, she'd even laid out some brand new pajamas. It was deeply uncomfortable. She perched on the toilet lid while I sat upright in the tepid water, not sure what to do with myself. A grown man with a beer belly hunched over in a gray water. I felt so stupid. Do you need help with washing yourself? She cooed. Sure, I replied. And then she came over and pulled out a fish-shaped bottle with no tear shampoo. She washed my hair, using a plastic cup to rinse my scalp. I had to lean back for her to get it all. And she held my head in her hands. I hated it.
My milk is delicious.
My eyes wouldn't stay shut. Her hands were too cold and the water too warm. The porcelain of the tub too hard, and every time the water flowed over my head, I would reflexively lurch towards and try to sit up. Which of course meant I got suds in my eyes. Thank you for the follow. Hi. Welcome to Scary Story Night. Shh, she kept saying. Just lie back. It won't hurt. I won't let it. So I laid back and controlled my breath and told myself that it was for her sake, not mine. One of my last memories of my mother was her reading a book while I sat in the bath, and I guess I didn't like how I felt in my wife's arms at that moment. But she just kept talking to me in that soothing voice, and somewhere along the lines, I let go of conscious thought and focused on the sensation of the warm water rolling down my scalp. You can let go, she said, wiping some water from my face. And when I looked up at her, I realized that I was shaking. My heart was pounding. All of a sudden, it all just came out, and all the tension, all the anxiety, the constant state of near panic that I'd suppressed for my entire life. You're meant to say that this kind of stuff feels cathartic, but I fucking hated it. It made me feel physically sick and even a little ashamed. She held me in her arms while I sobbed like a baby in the tub, and it was finally over. All I could think of was, thank God I can breathe again. I let her dry me as I stood dripping wet on the tiles, and then I let her dress me in the cool, dry pajamas she laid out ready. The silky fabric raising goosebumps on my skin. By the time I curled up into bed, her arms cradling my head like it was a precious jewel. I was exhausted, like I'd just gone for a quick 30-mile run. The last thing I remember was the theme song to Ed, Ed, and Eddie. And the flood of nostalgia combined with the feel of fresh bed linen put me to sleep hard and fast. The next day at work, I felt dirty and didn't much enjoy the thought of going home. I knew what was waiting for me, and sure enough, she was there with SpongeBob pajamas, brand new, in one hand and a plate of food in the other. At first, I told her I wasn't up for that tonight, but she just told me to stop being silly and to sit down and eat, and well, the food did look good. And stupid as this is, I told myself it was me doing her a favor, you know? Like, if I just agreed to have her do all of this stuff for me, it would be okay as long as I agreed begrudgingly. So I ate the food and wore the clothes, and I tried not to cringe when she called me her baby boy. As much as I hated it, she was being really nice to me. I just wanted her to like me, and she hadn't liked me in so long, and this was messed up business. You know, it meant that she was being genuinely affectionate to me. For years, she'd always kind of looked at me like I was a dick. I don't know where, but somewhere along the line, I stopped being her husband and just became a husband. Just another emotionally stunted guy with a receding hairline. I could have been more attentive. I know that. But nobody told me how exhausting mediocrity is. By the time I got through barely surviving work each day, I'd find very little energy left to give to her. I felt lonely all the time. Something about her being in her arms made me feel a little less alone. I secretly hoped that this roleplay was about dismantling the walls we both had built up. It wasn't on my terms. I would have picked literally anything else. But hey, when is life ever fully on anyone's terms? Being in love means being held hostage, and yeah, things were bad, but man, I fucking loved her with everything I had. So I had to work with what I had. What I had was this weird roleplay. I figured that it made sense that some women didn't want a daddy. That instead some women actually wanted to be a mommy.
Out of the wall, eh?
Oh,
I am the
yeah.
milkman.
Thank
My
you
milk
for
is
the
delicious.
raid. Hello. My name is NeoPo Senpai, your local pint-sized milkman, SCP, owner-operator, and CEO of the one and only gamer Milk Farm. And I am a goblin now. For the Halloween time, I am goblin, and we are reading a scary little roleplay. No! Ads! Bunch! Hi! I've joined you for the season. 'Tis the season. And we are reading scary stories tonight. We are on part 2 of My Wife Has Taken Our Roleplay Too Far. We've already read the husband's side of the story. Or the wife's side of the story. Now we're on the husband's side of the story. But thank you guys so much for the raid. Hello, I am a variety streamer. I am also a wannabe idol. I do karaoke nights every Saturday. We also have time-stamped VODs on my YouTube for every karaoke we do because I'm not monetized on there. Anyways, I might as well, get blocked in a couple of countries. I don't really care. But welcome in. I like to play horror games. I like to talk about weird shit. And now we are starting up reading some stories. Here are my links. And we need to give a shout out to you. Dun, 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 dun. So I think most of my mods are dead, right? I need to set up an auto one. Right, _EP _64. So tonight is like somewhat of a ASMR type stream, and it's my first time.
My milk is delicious.
Oh wait, no, that's not. Wait, it was Podge that raided me. What? Oh, I'm so sorry, Podge. It was Podge that raided me. I'm stupid. No. Enjoy your shout out. I'm very dumb right now. I couldn't read properly, and everything was mixed up, and it looked like someone else's name was next to the raid message. Hi, I would like you guys to know that I'm also very dyslexic and very blind, and I'm very, very far away from my screen. I've been streaming for 5 years, can you tell?
My milk is delicious.
But thank you so much, Podge. Maybe wearing the green skin is just showing my true nature, you know? This is just how I am all the time. This is just me. But so in this story, in the first half of this story, the husband comes to his wife and says that he wants to do roleplay. He wants to pretend to be younger. There's nothing sexual going on in these stories, just so you guys know. I have already read through them before. I know how they go. He comes to her wanting to do roleplay, and she watches him slowly morph in and out of some weird baby homunculus man creature. And he kills people. And he's insane. And it's really creepy, and the writing is so great on this. And we are now on the second part, which is the the husband's side of the story. So we're gonna find out how, things went for him. For his side, I'm stretching. For his side, she was the one who approached him. And now she's getting really, really creepy with this, right? She's leading too far into it. And he's feeling uncomfortable, but he's also so cozy. Okay, so let's continue it on. I figured that it makes sense that some women didn't want a daddy, that instead some women actually wanted to be a mommy. You see it online all the time, right? Daddy this, daddy that. You throw a stone online without you can't throw a stone online without finding some pornographic image of a woman being infantilized. So, why couldn't it go the other way around? So long as it wasn't sexual, I figured. I could do it. I'd wear the pajamas, watch cartoons, ask her for help coloring in the lines. In the end, I didn't just go along with it for a few nights. I went along with it every single day that followed. And I found that every day there was a little more of it to go along with. The packed lunches became more elaborate. The food I ate grew simplified until it was practically the kind of stuff you'd feed a toddler. And one Friday, when I finally told her I wanted a break, she just told me to stop being silly. She used that phrase a lot during the roleplay. This is going to sound fucking stupid, but she made me feel silly when she said it. Her voice immediately made me feel small and ashamed, just like I had in the bath. And before I even realized what I was doing, I was sliding the pajamas on and booting up my Xbox while she messed around in the kitchen. I'd actually planned on talking to her that night about going to a couples therapist, but she spoke to me like a little boy and I just couldn't stop myself reacting like one. It was like I'd been trained. That weekend, I listened to her tell me stories as I sat on the counter kicking my legs, and I felt something die inside of me. On some level, I have to take some responsibility. I ate the food I wanted to eat. When she asked if there was anything I wanted, I always had something to say. I watched the TV when I wanted to and wore the clothes she put out for me, and pretty soon I got used to not thinking about those things. Pretty soon every single day was spent with her. Some nights were movie nights and we'd watch her favorite films, and while she told me about all of the memories she had when she first watched them. Some nights were mommy nights where she'd sit and drink wine and watch her own shows while I played games. We made forts out of cushion, camped in the backyard, played cowboy and Indian using Nerf guns, and chased each other around the house for hours at a time, doing hide and seek or some homebrew version of tag. If I had to describe this time, it was like being in a waiting room, only I didn't have a number or a clock or any kind of way of knowing how much time had passed. The only way I could even tell time was passing was that I lost weight. In fact, I lost a lot of weight. My wedding ring slipped right off my finger one day, and where it went after that, I'll never know. I still don't understand this part of it, but I remember that I just kept getting thinner. For about 3 weeks, I fell ill with some stomach bug, and I spent my days in bed watching TV while she checked my temperature and fed me chicken soup. And by the time I came out of it, I was wearing a child's large set of pajamas. I mean, how does that even work, right? I started the year weighing 120 kilograms. And in the end, I got down to 45. I started the year weighing 100. Not only that, but my hair started getting thin and downy. And I couldn't even remember when I needed to shave. I asked her about this one day and she played it dumb. Like she didn't know that was happening to me, but out of the two of us, she must have known because it was literally right in front of her eyes. I was changing. She recommended that I stay home until I felt 100% myself. Again, which of course meant that I never went back to work. Because I never ever felt like myself again. Looking back, it wouldn't surprise me if she forged a resignation letter of mine or did something similar to keep me at home. Either way, by the time the stomach bug passed, I was trapped in that house. The outer gate had once barely reached my chest, now towered over my head, and I could barely get my fingers around the bars. It wasn't a new gate, or at least I didn't think it was. It was somehow taller than me all of a sudden. Things stopped making sense around this time, and looking back, it's hard to disentangle certain memories and ideas. I don't even remember the crib arriving. It was just there one day, along with a whole new room in the house that physically shouldn't have been there. I checked one late night when I felt lucid, and sure enough, the bathroom and master bedroom hadn't magically shrunk by 50%, but somehow a whole new room had just sprung up between them. And it was painted in a baby blue, and the walls were covered in paintings of airplanes. And if I stared at them too long, I'd feel really sleepy and my head would get heavy and boom. Next thing I remember, it'd be morning, and I'd be staring at a bowl of cereal. Whole chunks of time were purged from my head, and not just the recent stuff either. I was an accountant who suddenly couldn't do long division and struggled with multiplication tables. Normally my brain was like a cacophony of fireworks that took every ounce of my willpower to keep under control. Stray thoughts just pinged off all the time, and it was like, it was chaotic, but it was me. With everything going on, it had turned into something more like a cobweb with holes poked in it. You know, when you listen to someone and their voice just turns into a drone and you realize you stopped listening after a few words? It was like that, but with my own thoughts. As soon as I got any momentum, I lost interest. Time faded and I could feel. I'd come to a few hours later bouncing up and down on my wife's knee. I could practically feel bits of my mind slothing away like candle wax, leaving big patches of nothing behind, and it hurt so bad. It hurt worse than anything physical that had ever happened during that fucked up time. Something was cutting my mind up like a scrapbook going at old magazines, and I could feel it happening in real time. There were times when she'd take something off me, like the remote, and put it on the counter, and I'd just hang there over, and it'd just hang there over my head. And that just doesn't make sense to me. And the harder I try to concentrate and figure that out, the more it feels like staring right at the sun. And it wasn't just me. There were a couple of moments when she'd look at me and I wouldn't see my wife. Actually, that's not right. She was my wife. Absolutely, 100% my wife. She just had an extra 2 pairs of limbs, and it hurts even now to try to remember too clearly. What I do know was that as time went on, I felt less like precious cargo and more like a leaden weight she had to lug from place to place. Some nights, I'd wake up and spot her stood in my doorway looking at me. And the expression on her face, holy shit, it was murderous. I'd have to lie there and pretend for hours that I was snoring gently because on some level I just knew it'd be bad news. The time we spent together started to change. And more often than not, I tried to stay out in the garden and play with toys. Only I wasn't really playing, I was just pretending, hoping that if my performance was good, then she wouldn't get any more irritated with me. Without knowing when, why, or how rules were introduced, I go to do something like make myself a drink and stop and freeze halfway and remember that I wasn't allowed to get glasses out of the cupboard by myself. Didn't know how I knew that, I just knew it. I wasn't allowed to play games past 7, I wasn't allowed to get my own snacks, I wasn't allowed in the garden without telling her where I was going. And if I broke these rules... One time I threw a ball and broke a window and she exploded out of the screen door like a fucking bowl. It felt so wrong to feel scared of her. She was meant to be looking after me. Those were the roles we were meant to be playing, but she grabbed my arm and pulled it so hard it popped right out of socket and I begged her for the game to stop, but nothing I said could snap us out of these fucked up roles we'd made. She dragged me into the house and I passed out around the time my head bounced off the 3rd step of our porch. When I woke up, I was sat in a high chair and strapped in real good. Something hurt, but I ignored it. All I wanted was for this pissed off woman to love me again. I was so terrified I would have done anything she asked. She was the only thing I had to keep me safe in the world, and my head was full of all the amazing stuff she did for me. The food, the gifts, the movies, the clothes, the bathing. I could see how tired she was. It was me making her that tired. So I cried and I sobbed and I said sorry so often my throat got sticky and dry and I started to heave. When her terrible frown finally broke, she ran towards me with her arms wide open and pulled me out of that chair. She told me to never make her hurt me again, saying it over and over. And she sat me down on the sofa and rolled up my pajamas to show me my chubby legs. Something was jutting out of the skin, and before I could figure out what it was, she pinched it with her finger and thumb and drew it out in one long motion. It was a needle. A little sewing needle that had been slid painfully into the thick, fatty muscle of my thigh. "There have to be rules," she said. "And there have to be consequences, but don't worry. I want you to know that it hurts me just as much as it hurts you. But don't worry, we both suffer when you break the rules. I just want you to know that. Just don't hurt yourself. You don't just hurt yourself, you hurt me." I watched as she placed the bloody needle on her tongue and swallowed it. When the doorbell rang, I was looking at the diapers around my waist. I didn't know when or how they'd gotten there, and weirdly I remember thinking the exact same thing that morning. And the morning before that. The longer I thought about it, the harder it was for me to remember when I'd last actually used the toilet. The realization horrified me. Some of the memories flashing to my head, it was like I was experiencing them for the first time all over. The timid woman I'd married was suddenly so strong, able to not only overpower me, but able to actually lift me off the ground, to pick me up and lay me down on the table and hoist my legs up and... Jesus Christ, she changed me! I thought, and my whole body flushed with unspeakable humiliation. I think it was that feeling that kept my head together when the delivery man came. Like I had this little bit of defiance that stopped me trying to hide from the stranger. This is my chance, I thought. Wait, no, I'm not allowed to open the door. Not for strangers. But I can speak to him. Maybe he can help. Someone has to help. But if she comes and finds me, then I'm in trouble, and I don't want to be in trouble. It was like being drunk or like having my thoughts handcuffed to a maniac. I had to fight every step of the way to say a man and not a child. To stay a man and not a child, and I pulled at the handle, eager to get some perspective on what was happening to me. Only, I never even got to see the guy because that was when the bathroom door slammed shut. She's coming. And I knew that if she found me, then I'd get one hell of a punishment. My legs and arms already hurt so bad, I wasn't a very good boy. It does. My legs and arms already hurt so bad. I wasn't a very good boy, I knew. I broke a lot of rules, and it didn't help that the new ones were popping up all the time. I can also do this. I fled towards the kitchen, turning the corner just in time for the door to swing open and for the delivery guy to get a good look at me. I briefly turned to face him, and by the way he reacted to the sight of me, I expected to feel embarrassed, but I just felt scared. Something was happening to me, and the fact that this guy could see it made it horrifyingly real. My body had changed, and no matter what my wife wanted, I wasn't a child. I was changing into something, but I wasn't a normal kid. This wasn't Benjamin Button. Whatever happens when you cram a chubby middle-aged guy into a 3-foot package, the result isn't a cute kid. It's a nightmare. I ran crying from the look of his eye and got as far as the garden when I heard my wife thunder into the living room. "Who let you in?" she cried. "I have children in this house! Who are you and why are you in my home?" Poor guy was dumbstruck. I could hear him stammering away as I ran under the porch and waited. I'd learned this was one of those few places where she couldn't physically fit. The few times I'd hidden under, she had to calm herself down, and that made things a little easier on me. At least in the short term. Now I hoped to keep me safe long enough so that I could maybe make a break for it. When the guy left the gate open, she child-proofed it with some infuriating mechanism that my fat fingers couldn't work. But it sure did take a long time for the gate to swing open.
A fantastic day for capitalism.
And closed, and right there was my best chance I'd ever gonna get. "Get out of my house!" she screamed at him as he flew down the steps. She followed onto his heels. "Who's your manager? Who do you work for? I want to put in a complaint. I want you to know exactly how goddamn badly you've messed up." This guy was stuttering and mumbling and fumbling, unsure of whether to run away or turn and give this woman a decent account of himself. I hoped he would leave. I was hidden so well that if he opened the gate, then I would finally have a chance to get the hell away from this living nightmare. This guy was still trying to answer when my wife stepped down onto the path and turned to me slyly, raising one eyebrow right in my direction, where I thought I was hidden. Jesus Christ, the terror I felt. I pissed myself. I thought I'd gotten one over on her, but she knew the whole time and she had something planned. "Look at this," she said. "Look at this step. This wasn't damaged until you came along." The guy looked confused as hell. I couldn't blame him. He'd been bombarded with conflicting complaints. It was like he was grasping at air to understand everything he'd seen. It wasn't just my wife going off on him. It was the memory of what he'd seen. It was the memory of me. He bent down to take a look at my wife, and my wife encouraged him to get closer. I wondered why she was making him get so close to my hiding spot. Did she want to humiliate me? Did she want to parade the little freak around? I thought she must have known how much my body upset me, and she was going to use that fact to torture me a little bit. But it was nothing that tame. Without warning, his face slammed into the middle step, his head bouncing off like a coconut. Only she was there ready to catch it, and before either one of us could figure it out, she had shoved his head right back against the wooden step. He started to swear, then shout, then cry, and then finally he screamed, and screamed, and screamed. It lasted so long, she never stopped pushing, and somehow, impossibly, he started to give way. The sides of his skull started to crumble, his eyes bulged, his teeth popped out, and fell to the floor like coins from a slot machine. I had to pull my legs up just to keep them from landing on my bare feet. I had front row seats to the worst fucking show I could have ever think of watching that guy get scalped in slow motion. Only it didn't stop at his head. She kept pushing up his shoulders. Started to pop and crack. Arms bent backwards. Bones snapped, muscle and skin were peeled off with a sound like Velcro. In the end, he poured out of that little 6-inch gap and fell onto the floor in a quivering pile of skin and flesh. The only thing left on the other side was my wife's face staring through the gore-coated wood. "Come on," she grinned. "Put your new toy away. I'll make you some lunch." I was sitting outside pretending to watch the clouds go by, aware that she was behind the kitchen window and pretending to wash dishes. She was looking right at me, even if I couldn't see her. I watched her clean that guy up, watched her dump him in an old compost pile round back. He wasn't the only one down there. I saw all my old clothes, my laptop, my phone, my keys, my mail, everything that used to be me. They live in the middle of nowhere. They're very secluded. And I'm not just talking about things. I'd never really thought about it much, but I'd shrunk and changed. I guess all that meat and bone and fat had to go somewhere. I just hadn't realized that she'd tied it up in a dripping bedsheets and plopped it to the farthest point in our yard. I don't know how to explain it. I just knew it was me down there. Bits of me I'd never get back because it had been sun-baked into a leathery offal. Couldn't even begin to tell you how it feels to grieve your own body like that. Whatever defiance I had was gone, especially after seeing what she did to the delivery guy. Coming to terms with who, or rather what I was, meant that I lost all desire to escape. I would have tried to overdose if it wasn't against the rules for me to go anywhere near the medicine cabinet. I ran a thumb across the purple and yellow flesh on my thigh, the skin riddled with 1,000 infected puncture marks. Can't break the rules, I thought. When a frisbee floated freely over the hedge, I stared at it for a moment, like I was a disinterested cat. My eyes tracked it, but nobody was home upstairs, if you get what I mean. Only when it landed gently on the grass and I heard the gate clang open, did it dawn on me that I wasn't alone out there. It was a little girl, and her reaction wasn't all that different to the delivery man's. She stopped dead in her tracks and started to cry a loud, distressed wail. I wanted to ask her for help, but I didn't want to face the way she looked at me, so I quietly scuffled off towards the bushes to hide. Or at least, I started to. That's when I heard the screen door bang and my wife came down the steps with a big smile on her face. "It's okay," she cooed, reaching out to hold the girl. Only our visitor couldn't see the kitchen knife my wife clutched behind her. "I won't let anyone ever hurt you." When she started walking towards our kitchen door, something broke. I felt a special kind of hatred burn inside me. It wasn't defiant so much as pure spite. Kind of feeling that'd make you scream, "I hate you," over and over at your parents just to see them hurt. It sounds stupid, but as much as part of me wanted to keep that little girl safe, another part of me was just plain old jealous. After everything my wife had done to me, I couldn't bear the thought of her bringing another child into the house. I started to run towards the two of them, and my wife, spotting me, hoisted that girl up into her arms. Only that slowed her down so much that I reached them both before she could even get to the top step. I tried to grab the girl's coat when I jumped, but wound up grabbing a fistful of hair. Everything that happened next was a jumble, but my wife slashed my arm and wrist with that big knife of hers. And I pulled so hard on the girl's head that a load of her hair came free in my arm. In the end, though, I think it helped because the girl started screaming like hell, and when she got a good look at me, that was the fear really kicking in. And she started wriggling and kicking and punching, and my wife, who wasn't ready for just how hard it can be to keep hold of a pissed-off kid, ended up dropping the little girl.
I am the milkman. My milk
Thank you
is
for the
delicious.
follow. We're reading a scary story. Once her feet were on the ground, that kid just zipped right out of there, and I did everything I could to keep my wife away from her. I wasn't a whole lot, but I think it helped. I think between the way my messed up appearance got the girl running and the way I managed to hold onto my wife's legs for long enough to trip her a little, I think I saved that kid. Looking back on everything that my wife cost me, I guess that was one of the few victories I ever had. As soon as the gate clanged shut, all the feeling of triumph just dribbled away. I crawled back towards the porch steps as quick as I could, and the best way to describe it is that even though I wasn't looking at her, when my wife's eyes found me, I could feel them. Her rage. It must be what it's like to stand next to radioactive waste. I swear my shadow got darker and the ground got a little hotter. And the noise I heard, they didn't sound like they came from an upset woman. Not sure what they sounded like really, except maybe a strange kind of clicking. When I finally got out of the house and turned, I saw that she looked big enough to crush a man like a bug. I don't know how to describe it except that it was a little like looking at something with 3D glasses, or the way your eyes feel funny just before a big migraine, I guess. For just a second, I saw her as something that wasn't human, but the part that really hurts my head is that she never changed. It was the same entity I'd married on the altar, only now I got the same feeling I did looking at dead spiders or leathery roadkill. She'd never really been human, had she? And with my memory shot to shit, I wasn't even willing to bet that I'd even gotten married to this thing. You read about those parasites that lay eggs in their hosts, looking at her as she scuttled towards me. Yeah, I got the sense that's what she was, some kind of parasite. She stopped a few inches from the steps, her face peering at me through the gaps. She blinked with a third set of eyelids and smiled so wide her skin started to lose its color and break. "I will drown you in my womb," she said as calmly as she would ask if I wanted if I wanted cut up hot dogs in my spaghetti. I believed her. My God, where is this gonna go? I didn't come out of those stairs for the rest of the day. Not even when my wife stood on the porch and called for me to come to dinner. I didn't fancy my chances with whatever was shambling around up there and pretending to be my wife or a mother or whatever else it felt like. I didn't want anything she'd prepared. And as time wore on, I found that the hunger in my stomach sharpened my mind so that I didn't mind it too much. Besides, I could hazard a guess that she wasn't being honest about what was in my food, and I didn't want anything she prepared. Whatever this was between us, it wasn't really a game now. The stakes were too high, and for me, tucked away under those steps with my stomach growling and my mind growing more lucid with every passing second, I started to hate her. I hated that she'd hurt me when she was supposed to protect me. I hated that she'd lied every second of every day until this sick little plan of hers had come to fruition. But more than anything, I hated her for what she'd done to me. I wasn't a man, but I sure as hell wasn't a child. It's more like a monster and a joke, and I just knew that somehow she'd been the one stripping meat and fat off my bones until my frame withered to this pitiable size. I had to leave. I had to. She'd since locked the gate, and I needed the key. And if she stopped me, well, I guess I needed a knife, didn't I? I needed something to keep me safe. I waited until sunset and crawled out from under the house, making sure to stick to the shadows. Peeking through the kitchen window, I saw her stood there with a plate in one hand and a blank expression on her face. She looked a little broken, like she didn't quite know what to do now that I wouldn't listen for her cries of dinner. She just stood there and shivered until some flicker of movement caught her eye and she pivoted around to track it like a bird of prey. I had to drop out of sight more than once because of how sensitive she was to changes in the light, although I think I managed to avoid her line of sight because when I finally snuck into the house via the back door, she was in the exact same spot, staring into the darkness like a blind man. For a moment, I thought I was safe in the shadows, but whatever this thing was, it didn't seem so committed to playing human. As soon as I got near the stairs, her eyes fixed on me like a hound's and she came barreling forward on every limb she had. What little of her was visible in the moonlight looked almost fish-like, like she'd been pulled out of the bottom of a lake. She still had the general shape of a person, I guess, only it was like something wearing a human suit. One that was falling apart. Her joints slipped up and down, her bones like they were on a pulley. And they bent backwards and forwards and sideways. As she got closer, I smelled her and it was like rotten milk and dog shit left in a hot car. It hit me hard enough to water my eyes and make climbing the stairs difficult. Of course, I didn't get very far. Between my short legs and the sight of her coming at me, I didn't have a chance. I got maybe 4 steps up before she grabbed my ankle with one hand and hauled me downstairs. She mounted me, legs on either side, and slowly undid part of her sundress. I didn't know what the hell was going on, nor did I have the strength to fight it. Last thing I remember was the sight of her ribs pressing against her skin like fingers trying to poke through rubber sheets. It was like they were alive inside of her and wanted out. "Baby need a feed?" she asked before grabbing my head and slamming it backwards into the step behind me. I awoke with a foul taste in my mouth. I'd been strapped into a high chair and looked around groggily until I laid my eyes on a baby bottle. The congealed contents were the color of a smoker's finger, with visible lumps of pink matter lurking towards the bottom like syrup in a milkshake. "Straight from the source," my wife said, her misshapen fingers stroking my hairless head. I realized that my legs were in agony and saw that there must have been a dozen needles poking out of my skin and right through the pajamas she dressed me in. She pressed a finger against one for a second and the pain became so white hot that I nearly passed out all over again. I fought hard to stay awake, desperate to avoid another feeding. Although a part of me wondered if I wanted to endure the second one while awake. But when it all came down to it, it was just her in my way, wasn't it? And that hatred inside me burned up like a pyre, and I realized that I wouldn't mind dying all that much. I'd secretly hoped for so long that I could maybe fix this somehow. Maybe even get back to normal and get my body back. I didn't know how, but I'd let myself think that it could be possible. Sitting there looking at her over me, I decided that living like this wasn't really an option anymore. My hands were free. Who could blame her for leaving them like that? I couldn't hit her or kick her. I didn't have the reach or the strength. But I did have something sharp. So I reached down and tore a needle free, and before she could try and get it out of my hand, I shoved it right through her palm. It went right through, like she'd been made of nothing more substantial than some thick wood. Didn't even make a noise, although the stench she emitted became unbearably strong. She looked angry. Good, I thought. And I reached down and grabbed another, and this time she tried to be quicker, but it meant her face got closer. So close that the moonlight hit it, and for a moment I hesitated because I finally saw just how fucking god-awful she really was. You could see where all that skin was just slipping away and hanging loose like a badly made mask, and whatever was underneath it looked a little like a spider. Not a spider's face, mind you. No, like she had a spider for a face. Only it was a spider with too many legs that were all curled up like it had been stamped on a few times. Like her whole skull was a ball made out of furry rubber bands. But she still had eyes, and they looked mostly human. Like she'd gotten in so close that I could see those hairs twitch and wriggle. And Matt and I could lunge forward and jam the needle right into her eye, pushing so far that by the end it was embedded into the palm of my hand as it was in her skull. Or whatever she had. I don't know what exactly was in there, but it must have hurt because she let out a scream that drew blood from my ears, and she ran off into the dark. Desperate to get far, far away from whatever caused her pain. I didn't have much time. I slipped loose from the high chair and ran from the house, stopping only long enough to catch a glimpse of a shadow passing over the house, as if something had flown over. It's hard for me to say what exactly, but I had a vague notion that some of the lampposts in the nearby street were moving, and that they reached way too high into the sky. I felt her leave. Jesus fucking Christ. I felt her leave, and it was like popping a cyst. It hurt bad. It hurt like nothing I'd ever felt. It wasn't just protracted injury. Just more like being shot, I imagine. I don't know, I reached the gate and saw somehow that my hand dwarfed the lock by the time I'd fumbled it open. I was already hurling towards the ground like a falling tree. When I woke up, the house was blazing, and I felt like I'd just eaten 150 pounds of raw meat. But at least I was the right size again. I wound up having to take a trip to the hospital that same day so they could get the remaining needles out of my leg. I was laughing so damn hard that they wound up keeping me for my own safety, which, well, I guess I can't blame them for. Between the needles and the children's clothes and the way I screamed with joy at the sight of my own hands and my hairy arms, I guess must have looked really like a loon. I didn't feel too bad being stuck in that place, though, and they didn't keep me for long. They said something about spores in my lungs. I don't know. I don't even fucking care. I did tell them what happened, of course, but they just told me it was all the product of my mind. They say my head is fucked. I mean, they say a little more politely, but that's the gist. It's fucked. They showed me a scan of my brain and it looked like an apple after it had been spent 3 weeks in the ground in mid-August. I guess I'm not an accountant anymore. Most days I'm lucky if I can work a remote. I don't really care though. For a long, long time, she kept leaving me a packed lunch on the doorstep of my new apartment. Fucking nuts, but I almost ate 1 or 2 of them. It was that strong of a habit, you know. But instead, I always made a big show of throwing the food right into the bin. The last box was full of divorce paperwork, although it didn't look official, more like a bad joke. But that was the whole marriage, wasn't it? Just a bad joke. I signed them in crayon and left them outside. And that was the end of my husband has taken our roleplay too far, and the second part, which was my wife has taken our roleplay too far. And I'm going to be linking this one because it links back to the first one. So if you guys want to read this on your own or send it to your friends, bada boom bada bam, I'm putting it into the general chat on the Discord server. I'm thinking it's like some weird, they went crazy, okay? I think the mold or something made them go insane and they were seeing things from like different perspectives because they were both going in and out of consciousness. What if they were like flip-flopping between who was the crazy one and who wasn't the crazy one? Right? Because like she was randomly being like, "Oh my goodness, I do not feel myself anymore. Oh, it's just the gamer milk bar, but I decorated. Oh, the new room? That's right, there was a new room. It didn't say, but they both experienced the new room just popping up. Oh, it was so good. We need to find more scary stories. Let's see what's on the no sleep. Let's go to more r/no sleep and see if there's anything that sounds cool. Ooh, do 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 do. No, none of these sound good to me. We'll need to like go through and find something. If you guys ever want to submit a spooky story, I will read a spooky story for the month of July. The month of October. But thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out for story time. I think it is a good time for us to say farewell. I think we're gonna throw you in the playpen. We're going to say our farewells. I want to say thank you again to Podge for the raid and everybody who followed tonight. We got Pride EP64, Code Page 9, Nautical, Thornton. Thank you so much for the follows and welcome to the Gamer Milk Farm. Good night.